Hi, my name is Bianca Crowley, and I'm the Digital Collections Manager for the Biodiversity Heritage Library. I support the Secretariat in BHL Program Administration and Technical Development, as well as lead collection management activities. I'm going to share with you today my presentation for our annual meeting called Knowledge as Water. My charge is to facilitate BHL in achieving its strategic goal regarding relevant content, grow the BHL into the most comprehensive, reliable, reputable repository of data-rich biodiversity literature and other original materials to support response to global challenges. Participants in BHL's Collections Committee meet regularly to discuss a variety of collection management-related topics. Since the summer of 2020, we've been engaged in a variety of conversations. At times they've been difficult, about how BHL can achieve more complete and inclusive representation of the available knowledge of and perspectives on biodiversity. Thank you very much to you, the Collections Committee members, for your time, energy, and expertise. And thanks also to your home institutions for allowing you to dedicate your time. Our focus for the past year has been on the following implementation tasks as part of BHL's strategic plan. Review and update the collection development policy, discuss how to address harmful content in the collection, and clarify expectations for consortium partners regarding collection development and curation activities. Outside the Collections Committee, I've worked with Smithsonian Office of General Counsel and colleagues on BHL's Persistent Identifier Working Group to update BHL's license agreement and compose an addendum for previous license agreement holders to elect the assignment of BHL DOIs. Workflows to process the new forms, manage contributor-provided digital materials, and scanning queues across the consortium are still underway. Changes to our Macaw uploading platform to accommodate the new license agreements are also in progress. With a broad range of scientific publishing happening natively online, BHL continues to consider the scope of including in-copyright content within the broader context of our collection development activities. Our Collections Committee explored a variety of topics to prepare ourselves for the work ahead. As part of last year's presentation, I shared a series of questions that developed in my mind about BHL's role and responsibility as a digital library during a time of social, political, and cultural reckoning in the United States and globally. While we've addressed a few questions over the past year, these deeper inquiries will continue to challenge our thinking and shape our decisions for the long term. At last year's annual meeting, our consortium discussed several topics related to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. We talked about new website accessibility requirements and potential implications for our contributors. We talked about how we could benefit from a variety of perspectives and develop DEAI initiatives in conjunction with partners already invested in this work. We've discussed the need to address harmful content in BHL with a general statement and consider strategies like flagging materials or incorporating stop words to mitigate harm where possible. And as a reminder from our keynote speaker from last year, Ian Owens, to practice cultural change and improve cultural competency in the biodiversity world. 6 months later, in October 2021, BHL released its acknowledgement of harmful content. BHL's acknowledgement is linked from the header of our website, published on our About site, and documented as part of our collections on Internet Archive, as well as Flickr. My sincerest thanks to everyone who contributed to this major effort. We received positive responses from colleagues as well as Twitter followers, as you can see here, for this very first step in our efforts to diversify our collection and support reparative cataloging practices. In addition to the acknowledgement, the Collections Committee felt it was important to address a few obvious questions as part of our public frequently asked questions on our About site. We published a new collection management FAQ section in March 2022. Answers to these questions were included along with the text of BHL's acknowledgement. To summarize them here would diminish the time and effort our committee put into crafting these answers, so I encourage you to read them at your convenience. With significant support from Connie Ronaldo, the Collections Committee is now focused on rewriting BHL's collection development policy to align it with our strategic plan implementation tasks. Some of the major structural changes include the publication of our full content development policy for the public, transformation of the collections diagram from a target to a new form and expanding the subject matter for inclusion, restructuring the policy around collection of materials, requirements, and curation rather than those previous 5 points that we had in the collection development cycle, including our acknowledgement of harmful content and the reorganization of the content to clarify collection management expectations of partners. As part of our process to rewrite the policy, we used a virtual collaborative outlining tool called Cascade to identify missing topics, reduce repetition of content, and organize and rearrange policy sections to improve the flow of documentation. Beyond rewriting the policy from a procedural standpoint, we are deeply engaged in rethinking collection management practices for BHL. Our role as an active disseminator of biodiversity information means that we are responsible for what and how these materials are shared with a global audience. Each BHL Collections Committee member has pursued their own personal and professional learning through coursework, webinars, and exchanging resources through the building of a shared bibliography. The committee's thoughtful discussions in drafting language for the acknowledgement and subsequent collection management FAQ laid the framework for working together on a larger policy rewrite. Similar efforts are underway in galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, as listed in these examples here. In my observation, the question of an institution's neutrality continues to be at the core of the debate. Regardless on our take on the ability to be neutral or not, how has neutrality served cultural and natural heritage institutions so far? BHL value statements revolve around the concepts of stewardship, service, engagement, international workings, inspiration, and leadership. I'd like to highlight the value of international workings, where BHL articulates its role as an international program supporting its partners to build and sustain a global resource for the repatriation of literature. This value harkens back to BHL's origins, shaped by the Convention on Biological Diversity's call to repatriate information, especially with developing countries in mind, and inspired by Tom Moritz's call to create a biodiversity commons. BHL is rethinking its collection development policy to reinforce its commitment to the repatriation of information, while also developing a more mindful approach to biodiversity knowledge as a natural, ubiquitous, continuous, and vital resource. Knowledge is information known and understood, available in various forms and quantities throughout the world, as well as absorbed into people's cultural and biological identities. Is the knowledge contained in BHL materials representative of the diversity of knowledge available about Earth's biodiversity? Imagine if we were able to estimate the quantity of all biodiversity knowledge available and being created. How much of it is recorded? How much of it is published, selected for library collections, eligible for open access, available online, available in our partner collections, and available in our own BHL collection? In rethinking our collection development policy going forward, BHL is committed to understanding the biases embedded within BHL's collection and achieving more complete and inclusive representation of the available knowledge of and perspectives on biodiversity, such as including Indigenous knowledge. Encouraging partner institutions to diversify their collections for inclusion in BHL, and facilitating reparative cataloging and descriptive practices to address records that are historically inaccurate, offensive, discriminatory, or harmful. We also need to understand more about the content in our collection to prioritize and implement reparative cataloging practices, support the development of thematic subcollections that advance principles of inclusion and equity, and identify gaps in holdings as well as perspectives and metadata, historically undervalued and missing from our collection. Rather than trying to hold all the water, the increasing development of the semantic web grants us the opportunity to expand our channels and help BHL data flow into new pools of thought. Therefore, BHL's collection management decision is to maintain, as we have been, free and open access to the historical record of scientific knowledge, as well as its moral and ethical impacts and how these have changed over time, and support our program in bringing biodiversity data points to the surface and exposing them for reuse by other science and technology projects. The BHL Collections Committee looks forward to discussing our policy further and releasing it to the public in the coming months. Motivated by the opportunity to critically rethink BHL collection management practices, I look forward to realizing a more equitable collection of biodiversity knowledge to come. Thank you.